Hi, I'm a creative director and I am your worst nightmare. In fact, I've just finished designing this gorgeous new website. It's really visually rich, it's stunning, it's chock full of content. In fact, I've pretty much done all the hard work. I've been out on location for days, helicopters, lobsters, it was tough. And you know what? It's all ready to go. Hundreds of images, great kind of videos. I've even created full screen, beautiful Photoshop layouts, pixel perfect, ready to go. And I've even whipped out the old Flash skills and I've animated an intro. It's going to be beautiful. So what I need you to do now is make it fast. And when I say fast, like I want this thing to be instant. I want it to load extremely quick. Can you use, what's that thing you're always talking about? JStrap? Boot query? What is it again? And Steve, HTML6, when is it coming out? Surely that's going to be faster, right? That's going to be screaming. What? Did I hear that right? What do you mean it's too fat? What do you mean you can't make it fast? This thing was visionary. It was going to win awards. You can't do this to me. You know what? Forget it. I'm going back to making music videos. So we've all been there, right? The impossibly great website with so many features, so much content, bucketfuls of it, shoved into the website that it's extremely hard to make fast without throwing away the entire concept and starting again. Today, I want to share 3 tactics you can use within your organizations to increase the performance of your websites. I want to talk about how we can improve the performance of our websites by improving the design process that we all go through. Now, let me be clear. When I say design, I'm not talking about visual aesthetics or user experience. I'm talking about the process that we are all involved in. It doesn't matter if you're a developer, a designer, a project manager. Design is the simple process of using our knowledge and our creativity to solve a problem and bring a new experience to life. We all do that. It's important that we don't blame the designer in this process. It's the process that was broken. It's the process that led to this nightmare situation. Now, design cannot be broken up into a fixed set of sequential steps carved up, divvied out to different members of the team with the same results expected every time. Design is part rational and part emotional. And the most important thing is that design is improvised and it's responsive to the changing environment around it. We've seen the repeated failure of the waterfall model, where moving through a sequential set of steps just once only accumulates bad decisions along the way, often blowing out budgets and often delivering substandard results. We've seen the rise of agile as a more iterative, flexible development methodology, and personally, I'm a great believer in the idea of designing. That is, that before we design the final experience or product, we need to design the design process. We need to design the design process before we then design the final solution. So let me share a couple of attributes that designing has. It's iterative. We break the process into small chunks and experiment. We have a prototype. We use that prototype to explore an idea, and then we increase the fidelity with each iteration. We literally learn through the act of making itself. And we involve users constantly throughout that process. The key here is to have a flexible process. The key here is to iterate through again and again until we're in a great pace. The main mode of operating when designing is to be as mindful and as present as possible in the process. We need to have a constant awareness of the emotional state of a project, its changing needs and influences, how well it's responding to the people and the environment around it. The key here is to not be dogmatic and slavishly follow an existing process already in place. You need to be able to regularly take a step back and ask, is this process still working? What have we learnt already that we can use to change the process moving forward? Iterate with mindfulness. That all sounds quite lofty, right? So how do we embody this process? What are some simple tactical things we can do to ensure that when we improve the design process, we also improve the performance of our websites? So the first thing we can do is have some principles. Now, I'm not talking about detailed feature requirements here. I'm talking about how you and your team are going to approach shaping the solution. Have a set of 5 to 10 high-level principles on which the whole team, including clients and other key stakeholders, have agreed. Your job as the performance evangelist in the room is to ensure that performance goals are discussed and captured inside those principles. Capture the compromises and the challenges in the project, as well as the aspirations for the project. By doing that, you have a great set of principles that embodies all the conversations. And the whole team can revolve around those principles and ensure that those performance goals are being met. Then, when the client walks into the room and says, make the logo bigger, you can refer to an existing principle and an image budget that is already blowing out and ask, what compromises are you prepared to make? What else are we going to change in the design to allow that logo to be bigger? And on the other foot, a client can hold you and your code base to an expected load speed right from the very first line of code. Here's an example of a principle from the design of a news website. The research showed that users digest news in small, quick chunks. So it was more important that the site loaded fast than it was for it to be visually rich and full of design and brand assets. People are waiting by the bus, they've got less than a minute to scan a few headlines. It's extremely important that it's fast. And you can see here that there is even a specific mention of an expected load time, and that was used as a performance budget throughout the process. In contrast, here is a principle from the design of a New Zealand travel site. Tourists are making a big decision about flying halfway around the planet to visit New Zealand. So it's important we get really great information and really rich information in front of them. So people are making a big decision, so they might be a little bit more patient, but we can't take that for granted. The challenge for the team here was, how do we as a team ensure that this experience loads really quickly, but then stream and pipe in a really rich experience, making that tourist almost feel like they are there already, surrounded by amazing and wonderful landscapes, wonderful people and wonderful culture, motivating them to take that trip of a lifetime to New Zealand. Do it. Now, none of this works unless you have the right people in the room the whole way through. Mr. Creative Director went away in total isolation and created his magnificent vision without having any shared principles or goals in place. There was no way that the developer was going to be able to make that fast. It's absolutely critical you have a small, interdisciplinary team the whole way through the project to ensure that that iterative process is robust and actually works. The key here is to have all the knowledge in one room. Right from the beginning, everybody works on a prototype, and designers here are not working in isolation, creating pixel-perfect layouts. They're sketching, they're on the whiteboard, they're facilitating discussions about the user experience. They're contributing individual assets into the prototype. Developers are working with real-time data sources, preferably with real content, and bringing that whole prototype together. Researchers are understanding user needs and getting feedback on each and every iteration to ensure that it's on track. So everyone has a specialization in this team, but everybody is expected to contribute to all aspects of the project. And by doing this, by having a single prototype and everyone working on that from day one, all the conversations are embodied in one place. And there is a shared vision that can be used to measure against those project principles and those performance goals, ensuring that you actually meet them. And as you can see here, the process literally revolves around everyone contributing front-end contributing assets and ideas into the front-end to developer, who is then using frameworks to quickly prototype and bring that vision to life, reflecting it back to the team. So here's a moment I absolutely love. The client's in the room, the developer is literally manipulating column layouts in the code. The designer is providing feedback on the information hierarchy and the options they're playing with. All the attention and everything focuses around the prototype on screen. And by having a prototype and having a code base from day one, we can start to measure its performance. We can understand from day one how well it meets those user needs around performance and the goals we've set. So one of the challenges here is that performance is fairly invisible. It's pretty hard to see 100, 200 millisecond difference, right? So how do we monitor performance? How do we make it visible, not just for our interdisciplinary team, but for the wider organization that we need to have conversations with? So we can tackle this challenge around sharing performance knowledge by visualizing it in simple and accessible ways. Not everybody is a performance engineer. And so we need to invite people into that process. it can be really difficult and a really steep learning curve understanding the dozens of performance metrics that are available. So it's really important to choose just one or two key metrics that you share with the team and with the organisation and educate everybody on those particular metrics. Once you've got a key metric, visualise it in a simple and engaging way. Here we can see that the team has chosen a start render time for their user experience of 1 second. And we can see that in this performance budget, we are totally blowing that out. Everybody can see that. And so therefore, the conversations about what are we going to compromise to get ourselves back under that budget are far easier. We can all see it. We can all see that it needs to be remediated. Now, think about how you engage the wider audience as well and the wider organisation. How do you motivate other people in related teams? Everybody loves a horse race, and here we're using competitive benchmarking to motivate a CEO. We're pushing his buttons and saying, you know, you're slower. You're slower than those guys down the road. What are we going to do? Give us that budget so we can do that performance work and we'll get you to number 1. That's motivating. Not everyone understands numbers. Keep it as visual as possible. Use videos, use film strips. Doing this and putting it up on the screen and up on the wall, people can understand and see the user experience in a very visceral manner. You'll get them pointing to the screenshots, asking what's going on there and how their part of the process is contributing to slowing down or speeding up that part of the experience. We're all visual creatures, right? So create focus on a particular performance issue by simplifying the data as far as possible. Then use colour, texture, and form to allow anyone in the team to explore that data, understand it, and ask their own questions about performance, encouraging that performance culture across the whole team. Now, we can even bring that performance data right through into the user experience. Here, we're using a bookmarklet and resource timing to actually build a heat map directly in the browser, allowing anyone in the team to understand the sequence in which the page loaded and understand what individual resources are contributing to the good or the bad performance. And everybody can understand here that green is good and fast and red is slow and bad. So all these techniques are about making performance as visible as possible and as accessible as possible. And what we're trying to do is actually encourage the whole organisation to interact with performance. We need to get that performance information out of the head of the performance engineer and encourage everyone to engage with it. We want everyone in the organisation to be a performance evangelist. So those are just 3 simple tactics you can use inside your organisations to keep that conversation about performance alive throughout the entire process and ensure that you never have to deal with a creative director like me who dumps a half-baked idea in your lap again and says, make it faster. Over the next 3 days at Velocity, I'd encourage you to find the best ideas and steal them. But when you do that, make sure that you take those ideas back to your team and share the spoils. It's all about getting that knowledge out of your head and facilitating the discussions in your team. You want everybody in the team to understand the performance of your website and to care about it. And remember, design is a team sport, and you need to get everybody on board and everybody fired up to win. Have an awesome velocity.